Well, welcome, Billy. We're excited to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good. Could you jump in and share with our listeners a little bit about yourself, both personally and professionally, so they get to know you?
Yeah. So I grew up in Oklahoma in a tiny little town called Maud, Oklahoma, that nobody's ever heard
I
of.
never
There's
knew
about eight,
this.
I didn't know this either.
Okay,
yeah,
carry on.
about 1,000 people. Whenever I lived there, it was about 1,000 people. I graduated with it was either 32 or 36 people. I don't
Oh,
remember. I
wow.
don't think it's materially different. It doesn't
Okay.
really matter. Um, and then I did a small stint about 3 years around middle school in Phoenix. But mostly it was all in a small town in Oklahoma where most of my family still lives. Um, After high school, I joined the army right out of high school. In fact, I enlisted while I was still in high school over
Wow.
in January of my senior year. Um, and the reason really is I had good grades, but I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I didn't want to go rack up debt, and I couldn't pay for it myself. So I thought the army was a really good place to teach me some rigor, some probably some discipline, go prove myself a little bit, and also pay for college while I was at it.
Yeah.
Whenever I got out, it worked out really well. Um, while I was in the army, I met who would be my wife. She was also in the army. Um, got married really young. I got married at 19, technically, although it was 3 months before my 20th birthday. So depending on the audience, I'll say 20 sometimes, but not something I recommend. It was pretty young, and we also found out that we were pregnant on our wedding day. So
Wow.
not ideal.
You just like went
So
all in.
You did. You went for everything.
went for everything. Yeah, we'll come back to that in a little bit. And so, I spent 4 years active duty. When we got out of the army, we moved back to Wisconsin. I went to college at Stout, got my engineering
All
degree at Stout.
right.
Um, Graduated in 2000, and at the time, there was a little bit of a recession going on,
Mm-hmm.
kind of hard to
Yep.
find a job. So I got a job at a company called Eaton Corporation, making hydraulic pumps and motors and things, and they had a factory in Oklahoma, and that's where I moved back to.
No
Actually,
way.
30 minutes from where I grew up in the town that I was born in, because that
That's
was where the
crazy.
hospital was. So we lived there for a couple years, and then we moved to Kansas, moved to South Carolina,
Okay.
moved back to Minnesota, to Eden Prairie, to where their headquarters was. Um, and then I was there for 14 years, I think, a
Okay.
variety of jobs in supply chain, mostly in manufacturing. I consider myself a manufacturing guy, 8 years out of college, and that's what you do. And then
Yep.
after that, I got into headquarters roles, a variety of roles, of supply planning, demand planning, analytics, strategy, all kinds of stuff. And then I came to General Mills and started off in what was the baking division as a we would call it an OBM. I think everybody else maybe listening, I would call it a supply chain, an embedded business supply chain manager.
Yep.
And then I did roles there in baking and in the yogurt division that led to my opportunity to lead supply chain for Canada for 3 years. Went over to Blue Buffalo for 5 years in a variety of roles. I don't think I had a role in Blue Buffalo for more than a year before they changed it. Uh, but that was just such a fun experience. And then about 4.5 months ago, almost 5 months ago, I left General Mills and took a bet on myself, and I lead supply chain and technology for Duke Cannon, a men's supply company.
Awesome.
Every
And
time I see it in the store now, I always tell my kids, I'm like, I know the guy that makes this stuff.
it is such a good, fun brand,
It
really
is.
good products, and it's just such a fun experience. So General Mills is phenomenal in so many ways, but Duke Cannon is absolutely my dream job.
It's
Okay, so
fantastic.
Um,
Billy, you're out having coffee and with your new friends, and they're like, what do you do? What's your job? So how would you explain it to someone else?
Yeah, the way that I've been explaining that for years is supply chain is about making sure you have the right thing at the right place at the right time in the right quantities, and just doing that over and over and over and over again. And if that sounds compelling to you, then every one of those words, well, what is the right thing at the right place? Those are all verticals that you can, and people do
Mm-hmm.
make a complete career out of the thing or the
Hmm.
place or the quantity or the time, are all different subsets of supply chain.
Awesome. I like that. It's very simple and easy to understand.
Yeah.
So Katie and I have known Billy for years. He has been such a great, I think, ally, advocate for us, and you can tell we thoroughly enjoy him. So happy to, like, this season we are really trying to spotlight more male allies because we got requests for that as well. And so we're just like so happy to have you. But we do want to talk about, Billy, who are some of the women that have inspired you and what did you learn from them?
That was there's so many, I'll just say, and I'm going to narrow it to professional mentors. I think that was probably more appropriate. The very first boss I had that was a woman was early in my career. It was a second job I had out of college, and what I learned from her was how you interact with people, how you deal with people. Really is important. And the story that is just seared in my brain is she gave me a task. She said, you have to go round up employees to work overtime this weekend. And it's a union facility. There's processes on how to do that. And I went out and I scrubbed the floor and I did not get enough people to work overtime. And I came back and I said, they're all busy. They have other things to do. And she said, never mind, I got it. And then she went out and she got a full crew to work to work overtime, and it frustrated me. One, I was disappointed in myself. Two, I was frustrated because how can you do something that I can't do? And that's whenever I learned it's about influence. It's about having relationships with people. And that's whenever I started to adopt the strategy of it's not just what you do, but it's how you do it.
Yeah.
And I attributed that to her.
Love that story. All right. So Billy, I was doing a little bit of research on you before the podcast. And one of the things I knew already is that because of your military experience, you're a huge advocate for veterans and transitioning into the civilian world and the workforce. But one of the things that I learned about you that I did not know is that early on in your military career, you started out as a mechanic, but you became a warrant officer, which is kind of a big deal. For people that are not familiar with this, it really doesn't matter what your educational background is. It doesn't matter if you're, high seniority, low seniority. It is truly based on somebody's like deep technical expertise. So I wanted to know, like, what was that experience like? Because you don't meet very many warrant officers every day. And then how is that translated, maybe that experience, like all the way to like where you are today as a CSCO?
Yeah. I think there's two parts of it. The warrant officer, at least in the Army, I can't speak for the Navy or the other branches, but the Army, warrant officers are technical specialists. They can be maintenance is what I was. Helicopter pilots, most helicopter pilots are warrant officers. They're warrant officers in the Green Berets.
Yeah.
And one of the things of it is every warrant officer goes to the exact same school together. So, and it's completely random, with one exception. They tend to group all the special forces guys into at least one cohort, so they're all together, but it's not just special forces guys. So you could have a cook or a maintenance guy or a helicopter pilot all in the same group with a bunch of special forces guys, and I know that because the class in front of me was the special forces class, and I just watched them. Their physical activities was a different level than our physical activities.
Were you like, whew, shoot, I'm glad they were the week ahead.
Yeah, glad I missed that one by a week. That would have been troubling. So the other part of that is the challenge of how do you test knowledge if everybody has a different technical background? And what it was is warrant officer school then it's about focusing your resources, managing the time that you have. It's about time management. It's about prioritization. It's about how you deal with stress. And the whole point of it is I'm going to stress you physically, mentally, and emotionally and see how you do. And if you don't do well, you won't make it. And the attrition rate is relatively high. I think it's 70% pass rate. So it's no joke. So that to me, I think it taught me that how to deal with stress in the moment and keep my calm and continue to think about it. and to know that we're going to get through it. The goal of it is just don't quit. That's it. Like, just keep going and don't quit, and you'll get through it. Um, as that relates to my professional side, and especially at Duke Cannon, what it taught me is um, there's a gray area. So warrant officers do strategy and they can lead an organization like an officer, or if the day calls for it, they're going to put on their overalls and they're going to get under a truck or under a hood and they're going to
Yeah.
fix something. And to me, one, nobody's ever asked me this question in 25 years, and so thinking about the connection between my warrant officer school or experience and my current is really fascinating. So well done, Kate. But I think as it relates to Duke Cannon, it's like that here. At General Mills, it is a highly matrix organization, but you have specialists, and if you're a vice president, you're probably going to be a vice president most minutes of the day. Um, but at Duke Cannon, my day could start with talking with the CEO to prepare for board decks, and then I'm going to leave that meeting, and I might have to go build a model to help improve demand forecast accuracy, or I might have to go troubleshoot supply planning, like why isn't the supply planning system doing what we need to, or a variety of other things of like the altitude that I have to change every day from
Mm.
absolutely in the weed making really tactical decisions to what is our 3-year strategy, and everything in the middle is does really feel like a kind of a day in the life of a warrant officer, which is you do what's needed.
Yeah, I
I
think you
love
might have
that.
answered my question already, Billy did. So, yeah, as you think about, like, yeah, big companies like Eaton, General Mills, there's a lot of processes, there's a lot of people, it's very matrix. But there's there anything else as you think about how you operate? Because it sounds like you got to have a lot of, like, mental agility, like, all the time. So anything else you would say would be one of the operating differences or style as you think about that transition? Because we've had a lot of people go from different industries, but I do think it is more challenging when you go from like a smaller, medium to large organization going that way. So can you talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, so I think it's about pace, the pace at which things move at a small company versus a big company, the risk tolerance, and what does good enough really look like. So
Mm.
i- that to me is what I'm noticing as the difference of you're never bored at a big company and you feel like you're like moving so fast. The days go by so fast. You're so busy, but the impact that you're having or the results on shelf feel like they take forever sometimes, and that's different at a small company. Is we're able to make a decision and then see it really quickly in a matter of days or weeks sometimes. And I think that why is that? Internally, it's about risk tolerance of um, we are able to take more risk on shelves. Like, well, what if we put something on shelf and it doesn't work? Well, then you modify it and you fix it and you keep going. Whereas I think if you're at a big company, you have so much more to lose if you launch something and it doesn't work or it gets really bad reviews. You just lose a lot more. Where the small companies, you just have, I think you have that freedom, and then good enough. Like good enough is well that it kind of goes hand in hand, which is well if it's good enough to be on shelf and we're proud of it, well that's probably good enough, let's go. And if you're out at our scale, if I put the wrong cap on a shampoo bottle and I have to throw them all away, it's $10,000 of caps and it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the freedom to go from good enough, and that's kind of connected to the risk tolerance that then allows you to really move fast.
Do you think it's possible for bigger companies to like imbibe some of that?
I think to a certain extent there is, from my perspective, and I'd love if you agree with this or not, is sometimes the retailers are actually part of the problem. Is
Mm.
they the retailers are a lot more forgiving, a lot more tolerant for the smaller brands, and the retailers won't actually let big brands they won't let them experiment on shelf, and they won't
Yeah.
let them launch in small markets, and they won't say, hey, or they're reluctant. It's not that they won't. They're
I think
reluctant to
too the
say,
consumer gives a lot more grace too.
yeah,
Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
yeah, I think I hear
I agree. I think it's customer. I think everybody, when you're a large company, it's an easier target for anything that goes good or bad. So I do think if you're smaller, you get a little bit more, so you can lean in more. So I do think it's kind of like a cyclical chicken or the egg, like
It is.
what
Yeah.
causes it to be that way. But I think that is a good observation for sure.
Yeah. So I
Okay.
get,
Yeah.
yeah, I think the big companies can. It's just
Yeah.
harder to do, and then they
Harder
have
to
to
do it.
figure out a different way to do it.
But also, like we did it in COVID. Everybody moved fast.
Yeah.
Like
True.
everybody
Yeah.
did, and I would never forget it because I was like, "Can we please, like, let's hold on to this?" But the reason we could do it is because customers and consumers were like, "We will
Yes.
take whatever you have. I don't care if it's 3,000 red socks and nobody has socks. We'll take your red socks." I mean, and that's,
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, like
Yep.
I do think that freed us to like do that, and then I think it forced prioritization and decision making
Mhm.
in a way that we had never. So it is possible. So I remind
It is
myself
possible.
that we did that. A lot of other companies did it, and it wasn't more the most fun thing, but we did it. So
Exactly right.
I
And
want to remind
you're
us.
exactly right. I'm just thinking about there was a product that I was leading Canada at the time of COVID, and there was a product that was Canada specific, and the US was needed to fill shelves with food because not all of the suppliers could keep
Yeah.
food running. And we fast tracked bringing a product across the border that was a different format, a different brand, and all kinds of things that would have taken us years. If memory serves, I think we got it on shelf from idea to shelf in 3 to 6 months. And
Yeah.
so you can, according to your point, when you want to, you can do it.
You can do it. Yeah. All right. So, Billy, this next question is around transformation because some of our questions that we get from listeners is like, how do you lead through like these big, heavy transformations? You have experience. I think it was consolidating like multiple lines into one location. It also led to some plant closures as well as the analysis came out. As you're leading through that, and when it's having such a big impact, like a facility closure or moving lines, how do you maintain like trust and morale with the group? Um, and how do you lead through? I mean, it's almost like the grief of change too, because that's such a big and heavy change. Even though you know you need to do it for your business, it doesn't take away from the fact that it's hard. And like I said, we've had a couple of folks ask about this, so you have great experience in this area. I want to hear from you.
Yeah, I'm actually going to go. Before General Mills, I was in a transformation at Eaton Corporation where I was the ops manager for a plant that we were closing and moving production to Mexico.
Mm,
Um, and I was the SIND team leader, and my job was to make sure that the factory continued to run post announcement for several months as we packed up machineries and bits and pieces and laid people off in waves, and
mm,
that was really really challenging. And what I learned from that is, um, and maybe this was not a compelling reason, but the reason why you're doing the transformation has to be clear to people. Why we're doing this is fundamental. If it's this really fuzzy, ambiguous reason why we're doing it, then nothing else matters. You lose all trust. So, while the message was we're moving production to Mexico because it's cheaper, um, it isn't a fun message, but it is clear and it is
hmm
believable and
Yeah.
it is real. So that starts with one. And the second part of that I learned is honesty and responsible transparency. You have to be honest with the entire process, and you have to be as transparent as possible with what's going on. And what I what I the message that I was able to that resonated with the team that I was trying to keep motivated every day to come to work and work safely was you should explore options. We've told you, what the conditions are going to be here. We've given you the reason to stay. Usually those are financial incentives, but you have to explore your options. You have to do what's best for you and your family. And if you do that, then you're doing the right thing. And if that means staying here, I'm very appreciative. If that means that you have to leave, then I respect that. But
Yeah.
you just have to do what's best for you and your family.
Well, it's really like putting people first, right? It is a hard
It does.
message. And I agree. It's not an easy one to deliver, but people do appreciate, I think, was it clarity is kindness, is what Courtney's always
Clarity.
saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it is a tough message, but again, like just being honest, being real, and then I think supporting those people through the transition. I love that too.
And I think especially if I think of some of the big transformations I've been a part of, it's easy to forget about the people side of it. It's always about the technology and all the
Mm,
tactical execution of the change. And I remember when I was like right out of school to my first project at the plant. And I remember vividly kind of what you talked about, Billy, your stories where you're like, I mean, I did not do my due diligence on building relationships and my project failed. And I was like, this project's amazing. Like, why? And someone was like,
Yes.
they will make or break your project if you don't do the right change management and get them engaged. So I learned the hard way where I was like
hmm
25, like, I'm gonna go out here with this amazing project, and they're gonna love it. Cause why?
Yeah.
Why not?
Well,
They did
it's
not
so
love it.
true. It is so true. It's also all about the people. And you're like, but what about math and logic and
I had
rationale? And they're like,
my
but
program ready to go. I was like, I
yeah,
downloaded it into the PLC. I was like, boom, like,
yeah,
"You're welcome.
yeah.
You're welcome."
The computer says it's going to work. What
Yeah,
is it?
they were like, "This isn't working. We don't like this."
Yeah, it
I
is.
remember
Yeah, yeah.
I had a little jump drive. They're like, "Your little jump drive can go back to the office." And I was like, "This is amazing." But anyway, so at Duke Cannon, you're dealing with men's grooming products, so very different than industrial parts or shelf-stable food. And as we know, trends in personal care can shift very fast. I'm not on TikTok, but I see the outcomes of that, just like social media and everything else. So how do you build, a resilient, somewhat rigid supply chain that's cost effective, but you need flexibility when a new scent or product, when someone decides it's going to be the next big thing? Like, how do you really have both of those things, which, and we all know in
Yeah. So,
supply chain we need.
yeah, I think it's twofold. So there is that we do put deliberate resources into trying to predict what the next trends are. Um, and then we take bets, and in our case, bets are small, or they're relatively small. So that's one, is to make sure that we have the capability to react, so that when trends come up, we're ready. So that's one part of it. Um, I would say the other part of it is, in my case at Duke Cannon, scale is our friend and efficiency is relative.
Mm.
And what I mean by that is, I spent many years at General Mills, and scale means efficiency. And we invest in really
hmm
high tech automated lines that cost a lot of money and are the best in the world at what they do. I don't live in those worlds. I live in really manual processes, really small lines that are, that are they can change sizes, they can change quantities, they can do real things really, really quick. Now, the consequence of that is I can't run very many at a time. Um, Scale is my friend. I don't need many at a time, and efficiency is relative. And so, at General Mills, we're chasing pennies or half pennies because we're making so many that
Yeah.
a penny times a lot is a lot. In my world, I'm looking at dollars instead. And so, um, if I can save a little bit out of a great big base, it usually is material to my world. So I think that's how it is. If you look at our manufacturing capabilities at Duke Cannon and the co-manufacturers that we use, is a fundamentally different than what you and I would experience at General Mills. Now, that being said, there are co-manufacturers out there that would look like a very capable, mature, futuristic supplier. We just generally don't have the volume to take advantage of that yet. Yet being the key word.
I like it. I love too. Efficiency is relative and scale
Hmm.
is your friend. It's a good
Yes, I
takeaway.
like that.
Okay. So, Billy, one of the other things I've now learned about you. I know. I love this. You have a black belt. You're Six Sigma, right?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Okay. So I knew you knew data and analytics. I feel like you do a thorough analysis on all the things. But can you tell me about a time though when maybe the data showed you one thing and your intuition was telling you the other?
Yeah. This is such a hard question because as you just said, data is my friend. I love data. Spreadsheets are my love language. Um, and I really don't do a lot of things without data. So like, when did I ignore it? Was that's tough. There was one time though that I did, and I used the wrong data. So
You're like, no, I didn't
uh,
ignore it.
I
Like,
didn't
so in
ignore
the
it.
end, the data is still good.
The data was still good. I was just not listening to the right data. And it was post acquisition of a significant acquisition we did at Blue Buffalo, and what I learned from that is you never know what you buy until the day after it closes,
Oof, truth.
regardless of due diligence. The
Mm-hmm.
best due
Say it for the
so
people in the back. That's so true.
whew, um, and what I found is early on in after we took control and we were starting to figure out what we had just purchased, the financial forecast was disconnected from the supply chain forecast. I know that never ever happens in any of our lives, but it happened there, and it was significant. The financial forecast was significantly higher than the operational forecast. And me and my financial partner at the time, we were looking at it. We saw it, and we just said, that I don't know. We didn't have the most. We weren't looking at it through positive intent. So we discounted the financial forecast because if you looked at the trend lines, if you looked at the growth rates, the operational forecast made all the sense in the world. So we ignored it for about 2 or 3 months while we focused on other things. And then whenever we came back to it and said, every single time they re-roll their financial forecast, they keep coming back to this number, and it's substantially higher than your ops forecast. Like, we should really figure out what's going on here. And what we've learned was, prior to the acquisition, we had sold in 2 MVMs into Costco, one at the beginning of one quarter and then one at the beginning of the next, but it was going to ship in the last quarter. So basically 2 MVMs within a quarter. Significant,
Mm.
significant volume relative to the baseline. And I ignored it for 3 months. And
Cute.
it was a problem for us.
Was that a learning moment, Billy?
That was a learning moment. It got overshadowed. So in the midst of trying to figure out how to catch up on the pre-build in order to be prepared for that, and negotiating with the customers to see if we can shift the timing out, and find all the ways to be successful. The factory that produced our product, one of the lines caught on fire and was down for 3 months, and we
My
lost
gosh.
30% of our overall production. So it didn't matter anyway, because there was no physical way to
Mm.
make up for 30% of your volume overnight. So yeah, that was the one time it was there. It was staring us in the face, and we chose to ignore it because we wanted to believe a different data set.
That's so many lessons in that
There were a
story.
few lessons
So
in
many.
that one.
But also,
So
like,
many.
I always feel like it's supply chain. This is so off topic, but anyway, it's a Friday. So I've been watching the show Landman, and
Oh,
I feel like that
such a
makes
good
me
show.
it feels like I'm like, it is like every day something is happening. Like, he can't the minute he wakes up, it's like so, and then I felt like he was like talking to someone that said, "Oh, this," and they're like, "Which problem is this? Is this problem on this thing or this problem?" That's how I feel, which I love. But in supply chain,
Yeah,
where it's like, "Oh, don't worry about that. You got this wrong because this other problem over here is going to
Here.
overshadow that anyway." So it's all like,
it's
it's like,
okay.
it's all right. It doesn't matter. Okay, we're gonna do a huge pivot right now and talk a little bit
Okay.
more about allyship. And I wanted to highlight, me and Katie were talking about, we learned so many things when we have people that we've known for years on as guests, but something in your background that we rarely see on executive resumes. And you served on the board of directors for the Minnesota Sexual Violence Center for nearly 3 years. And that's a very important and critical role. And so, how did that experience shape your perspective on creating safe, inclusive, and respectful environments for women in the workplace? Particularly in some of the male-dominated settings.
Yeah, again, this one was a big one for me. So this occurred before I joined General Mills, and it was important to me at the time because, I mean, I think in context, what I learned at General Mills is allyship and advocacy is critically important for everybody. It makes everybody better. It makes the business better. It is something that I take with me and will take with me forever, that I didn't come into General Mills with. And I would say I didn't really have it with my time at the Sexual Violence Center either. General Mills kind of brought it together for me. At the time, I wanted to give back to the community, and I wanted to engage with an organization, a community and purpose that kind of that spoke to me, that connected with me. What it did is it created empathy and understanding, and opened the door for understanding. It opened my eyes, and I started to notice things a little more of like what sounded like innocent comments before, but they're now like almost offensive to me, and I have to be careful, given the audience. But it's like here's a couple things that maybe you've heard once or twice before that that speak to me differently now than they did back then. And it's like, have you ever heard anybody say, "Well, I don't see color," or "I don't, I don't care who you sleep with, who you lay down in bed with at night. I want to respect you as a person." And I think that comes from a good place from the people that are saying it, but I think it's it's so misguided because if I don't see you for who you are, I uh, how do I see you? How do I know you? How do I value you? How do I like how do I respect you? Um, and I know I used to say those things. I used to say
Mm.
those things, and I thought it meant that like it said I don't care about your gender or your color or your sexual preference. Um, but I should. Like that's the point of it. Is like actually I should care, and I do want to see you for who you are. I don't want to just ignore it. That's what it taught me out of that. And then you mixed kind of that epiphany with what that looks like in action at General Mills, and I think that's what that's a part of what makes General Mills so special.
Thank you for sharing that. I do think, to your point, people really do, because I've heard people say it and they've said it to me. It does come from a place of inclusivity and care, but I do think it is lacking I'm like, you should see color because I like it's here, right?
Yeah,
And I want
yeah,
you to see it, and we should be proud of who we are, and we shouldn't have to pretend to not embrace that. And I feel like that's something that and that we were talking about it earlier in another recording. Like that's what I love about kids. Like they just like embrace each other for like who they are
Mhm.
in every way. And it's like a beautiful thing that I think we as adults just need to embrace and learn
and
from them for sure.
exactly, yeah,
So thinking about culture, and so you're at Duke Cannon, which has some pretty fun branding, I would say, things like big ass bricks of soap.
yep,
It does make me laugh. I mean, it's funny. My kids think it's hilarious too. Um, but like behind the scenes, right? But that is part of the identity and the brand. And it's fun and it's cheeky and it is, it's more masculine. So how do you make sure those still like you can have all those things and they can still be fun and true. And you can still create this inclusive and diverse culture in your supply chain team.
yeah. Such a fantastic question. I'll start by saying, I think that there's a difference between branding and culture.
Mhm.
Sometimes they go hand in hand. And in Duke Cannon's case, I do think that they are meaningfully different. So I think what we come to work with every day is focusing on our core values: bravery, go big or go home;
Love
uh,
that.
agility, our size is our advantage, and we can run between the legs of our competitors; togetherness, we work as one; and driven to win. Nobody cares more about Duke Cannon than we care about Duke Cannon.
Mhm.
There is nothing about masculinity or gender or
Mm,
sexuality in any
Yeah.
of those core values. And not only is it words, but if I just take a look at well, how does that come to life at Duke Cannon? And I would start with representation matters. And if I look at my team, a third of the entire company works in my organization. So I think it's a really good data set. 10 of 22 people are females. So not quite half. and 3 of my 5 leadership team members are females, so a little more than half. So I do think that the branding is one thing, but really it's about the culture, and the culture is focused on you know, bravery, agility, togetherness, driven to win, and then the comedic militaristic branding is just fun. Like
It is.
it comes from
Yeah.
all aspects of the company.
Yeah.
That's a good reminder because I do think as a person on the outside, it's easy to say the brand and culture, your assumptions would be that they would it would
Yeah.
resonate through. I would make that assumption if I'm
Yeah,
honest.
I did. I made
Eh,
that assumption. I thought I was
yeah.
going to walk in there and I was going to be surrounded by big burly veterans. That's
Big
what
ass soap.
big ass soap. Um, and that shockingly, there are very few veterans at Buchanan right now. I'm hoping to influence that as we get the opportunity. Um, and as I talked about, my team is nearly half female, and I would say that that's pretty consistent across the country. It's not quite 50-50, but it's more than you would expect.
It's a good takeaway, I think, for
Mhm.
people who are looking to move into change.
Mhm.
No matter what the brand is, like it's the culture at the company,
Yeah.
right? And
Yes.
what is that like?
Yeah.
Okay. We're closing it out with it's one of my favorite question
It
sets.
is.
So it's called Hero Hardship Highlight. So hero, a person who inspired or encouraged you to achieve something. Hardship, difficult experience in life, what you learned. And then highlight, we always like to end on a positive achievement or proud moment.
Oh, all right. So this is, uh, I thought about this one a lot, and I'm going to intertwine them too because the hero. I actually have to talk about the hardship before the hero makes
Okay.
as much
Yeah.
sense. And I don't know if we've shared this. We've known each other for years, but my hardship, I would call it kind of 3 phases. I had a really unstable, difficult childhood. I had a mom that was married 5 times, twice to my dad, but still, that's
Mm,
a little unstable. I personally experienced all 3 forms of abuse: mental, physical, sexual abuse as a young child. My father was an alcoholic. As we talked about earlier, I got married at 19, although I tell people sometimes 20 because, these 3 days really matter. I don't know. And then, like I talked about, we immediately jumped into both being adults and being married and being parents, basically all at the same day at a really young age. 2 months after that, we found out we were going to have twins. A month after that, we found out that one of the twins was had birth defects that was
Mm.
incompatible with life, and died 10 hours after birth. And then all during that time, we lived in Germany. No family, no friends, just
Yeah.
complete isolated, which is really hard. Um, and then in rocky adulthood, my mother committed suicide about 15 years ago. Marriage. I talked about being married. I was married for 21 years. I've been now divorced for about 10. Um, though the reason that I had to lay that out is my hero was my grandfather, because during that tumultuous time of growing up, my grandpa was my anchor. I actually lived with him. I moved out of my mom's house and lived with my grandpa most of my teenage years, and he was the person that I looked up to the most. A flawed human as we all are. But he did the right thing. He didn't. He saved me from an environment that I don't know where I would be had he not been there. So that was huge. The hardship. Here's what I learned about all that. I am a glass half full guy. I am going to find the silver lining no matter what. That's what I've taken away from that. Is it's so easy to kind of focus on the negatives. But it's just such a dark path and it's really lonely. And if you're the person that's always focusing on the positive and always focusing on the silver lining, you find yourself um, being more of a motivator. You find yourself people gravitating towards you
Yeah.
because you're like, who wants to
mhm.
be around a negative Nancy all the time? um, and I like people. And I don't want to be lonely, and I want to focus on the positive. So I think that's what I learned out of that is, yeah, those are really hard things. But it's made me who I am today, and I like who I am today, and I wouldn't be here without those challenges.
We love who you are.
Yes, I
So
say
Well,
we
thank
love you,
you,
thank you for
thank
Billy.
you.
sharing.
Yes, thank you for sharing your story.
Um, so then the positive chain or moment, again, y- you can't be in supply chain for 25 years without having so many things to be proud of. You can't be a father without having so many things to be proud of. Um, but I think as it relates to this environment, what it goes back to where we started. It's all about the people. What I'm the most proud of is having been in this game for so long and still connected with people that I made an impact in their life 10, 15, 20, 25 years ago, still in their life. We're still connected. We still kind of talk about old times and even the most compelling ones are whenever I had to give really difficult feedback or whenever I had to really challenge somebody and they didn't really like it in the moment, but afterwards, that it worked out well for them. Those are the memories that come back to me that like I think I'm doing the right thing. I think that this is what I'm here to do.
Billy, this was so lovely. And I learned so much about you. And Billy and I've talked a lot. So,
Yeah.
like, apparently I need to do op-ed and research on people because this is just such a, like, I just appreciate so much about your vulnerability and willingness to share.
Mhm.
But also, I have always felt like you've always been a great advocate and ally for Katie and I, and throughout our time at General Mills, and so that's why we were so excited to reach out to have you on today because I think you can be a great example of what ally
That looks
what
like an action.
really looks like in
Yeah.
action. So we so appreciate you.
Thank you. I am so excited, honored, proud to be part of this journey that you're on. And I look back at us. I mean, can I just say, 10 years ago, like who would have thunk we'd be
I
sitting here today, right?
know, I know, right? I mean, that is like, yeah. I mean, yeah. Think about 10 more years, what we're gonna be doing.
Yeah, yeah.
Who knew?
I mean, it's exciting. I
Hopefully,
mean,
I'll
if
know
we come
somebody
this
who
far
do.
in 10 years, just imagine what we can do in the
What
next.
the next 10 will be.
I
Yeah.
Yeah.
know. Thank you so much, Billy.
So
Thank you.
good. Thank you.